Welcome to the Referrals Podcast, the show designed to help everyone from the solopreneur to the Fortune 500 company win the referral game. And now, here is your host, Michael J. Maher.
Once again, Happy New Year, Happy New Year, Happy New You. And we are in the midst of our 7-part series, Rise and Thrive in 25. These are the foundational steps and foundational concepts to truly build your referral-based business on a base of love, generosity, and appreciation. Today, we continue, and today is you getting better as you launch your new year into a new stratosphere and you truly understand what it means and what it takes to build a referral-based business. Enjoy today's episode and rise and thrive in 25. So today we are diving into part 3 of the 3 C's of referability. So far, we have covered the first one, character, and about, doing the right thing every single time. And we also talked about competence, which is doing things right every single time. And I love that that's where we started. And that's where any conversation about referrals has to start is, you know what? Be a good person and do what you do good. Do what you do well, and it has to start there. That is the third C of referability, is communication. The number one complaint, according to the National Association of Realtors, is not about the character of real estate agents. Isn't that interesting? They don't say that they did the wrong thing or they belligerently didn't disclose or they hid anything or anything like that. And guess what? The number one complaint is not about our competence. It's not about negligence or paperwork error or anything like that. The number one complaint that the National Association of Realtors fields about realtors, 83% of the complaints are about communication or lack thereof. The number one complaint is communication. And just so you know, you guys are like, well, I'm not a realtor. But here's the deal. How many of you have ever been in contact with a business and you get frustrated about their lack of communication? How many of you called a business and you repeatedly get these options of different buttons you can push and never get a person? And your question isn't answered by the 9 options that they give you. And wouldn't it be great if somebody just picked up the phone and helped you and got you pointed in the right direction? And that's what communication is all about. You want to be more referable. You want to get more referrals. The answer is communication. Be a better communicator. And that's the third C of referability. And it sounds so simple. It's kind of like when people on stage, everybody goes, it's all about relationships. And everybody, the other panelists nod, the moderator of the panel nods, everybody in the audience nods. It's all about relationships. And yet it's far more complex than that. It's like building a relationship is far harder and far more complicated than, saying it's all about relationships, because I truly believe it's all about referrals, which is based off relationships, but that's a story for another day. But, and honestly, that's 7L. That's why I wrote 7L, the 7 levels of communication, is so that we could go from relationships to referrals. That's the subtitle, by the way. We want to go from having relationships. Everybody has relationships. And we want to go to getting referrals, from referrals flowing from our ambassadors and our champions and the people that know us, and maybe even some people that don't know us. And that's why I wrote the entire book, was because that was the biggest challenge and still continues to be the biggest challenge in sales today, is communication. It's communication. Well, scripts are part of communication.
Copy. Why don't you go over the 7 levels?
Yeah. So what are the 7 levels of communication in the 7 levels of communication, right? So it's a cute little pyramid that I drew up on December 18th of 2007. And so the bottom 3 levels are advertising, direct mail, right? And then electronic communication. So those are the bottom three levels of communication, and they are deservedly the bottom levels of communication. Advertising, the old adage about advertising is, 50% of my advertising works. The problem is I don't know which 50% it is, right? Which is super sad. And that's why marketing was invented, is so that we could actually track our sources and figure out where our money is going. What's the return on investment? And that's where marketing, right? Marketing was get them to call in versus just putting a name out there. And so then you got advertising, and it's very expensive. It's very hard. You're also, if you're a solopreneur or a small business, you're competing for space and the eye of the consumer with people who have multi-million-dollar budgets, Nike, Coca-Cola, et cetera. You don't want to fight that world, right? You don't want to battle in that world. And so then you got direct mail. And the thing is it's, once again, it's a little bit better because you can target it, the addresses and so on and so forth. But the response on direct mail is less than 1%. And so in many cases, less than 1/2%. And so, you could be spending a lot of money. And the other part of it too is the millennials. And nowadays, you're more likely to offend somebody with a postcard than to get a good response. You're going to be turned in to somebody because you're killing trees by sending out all these postcards. And there is, it's like junk mail. It's got its own name, junk mail. Do you want to use something that's called junk mail? And they open their mail, and we all open our mail and go through our mail by the trash can. And we throw away half of it, most of the bills and all the other stuff too, right? So it's one of those where that's a tough place. And once again, it's really hard to stand out. It's really expensive to do. And then you've got electronic communication. And I would say 10 years ago when I wrote 7L, electronic communication was actually more powerful than it is now. It's actually gone down in power and usability. Nobody checks their email anymore, and nobody really responds to email. And by God, if you're sending a newsletter or a market update, it's just deleted like everything else, if they even see it, because it's going where? Into the junk box. Oh my gosh, you mean there's a junk box or a spam box? Yes. And most likely that's where it's going. They don't even see it. And electronic communication is one of those. It's easier to take a relationship you have a 5 level, like just a medium level of relationship with, like they're a friend. It's easier to take that person from a 5 to a 1 and blow that because of the wrong email than it is to take that 5 to a 6. It's easier because written word in an email, it doesn't have any tone. It doesn't even have any nonverbals. It doesn't have a lot of the elements of good communication. A lot of communication is tone, nonverbal, body actions, language, everything else. And so you don't get any of that with an email. So an email can come across very rude, very blunt, very, or too much, right? You get these long emails, very flowery, and it's like delete, I didn't even read it. And electronic communication it's the same thing with text messages, right? I believe that text messages have far more usage than email. But once again, you can blow a relationship with a really rude, you're like driving and texting, or you're at a stoplight, so you're not technically driving and texting, and you text something really short and there's a misspelling, or it's just blunt, or it's whatever, it taken the wrong way. And I've seen, how many of you have seen Facebook posts from agents or from business owners where they show the text strand of the people and themselves, and they're like, isn't this guy an idiot? Isn't this guy crazy? And it's like the crazy one is the entrepreneur or the realtor who's trying to convert somebody through a text message. That's crazy. You got to get on the phone and talk them through it, and so on and so forth. So then you have the middle of the 7 levels, which is handwritten notes, and that's power notes. And isn't it appropriate that today we started with a power note from Eric? And, we're going to keep that power note forever. Think about it. What marketing piece that you could ever send would, it will be opened? You know it will be read. Every single word will be read, and it's likely to be kept forever. And in some cases, will be posted on a bulletin board or a refrigerator for years. There is no better marketing piece that leaves your office on a daily basis or your home office than a handwritten note. And I prefer that you write it in the power note way, which we in several podcasts covered the 7 steps to a power note. And I encourage you to go check that out. So here's the thing is those are the bottom 4 levels. Then you have the top 3 levels. The bottom 3 levels are called the informational zone. And they're great for informing. They're great for telling. They're great for that kind of thing. And then you have the top 3 levels, which are the influential zone. And I believe we've gone through the industrial age to the informational age. Well, we are entering and are actually in the influential age. We need to seek to be influential, not just informing. That's what market updates do. And you think that they're helping you. They're actually not, right? Nobody's reading them. Nobody cares, right? So how do we be more influential? We need to seek to be more influential. And so you've got phone calls, which, almost a lost art in today's world. You can instantly stand out by actually answering the phone or picking up the phone and having a phone conversation, right? And then you've got events and seminars, which many of you that have been, kind of plugged into the where we're at right now with the referral mastery system with self-mastery, relationship mastery, and event mastery is events are the biggest movers in the market right now. Our people are winning. Why are they winning? Because they've learned event mastery and they've learned how to go from, having relationships to getting referrals through hosting events, right? And then you've got the top level of communication in business, and that is one-to-one meetings. 1-to-1. And I will tell you, if there is one other person sitting at that table and there's 3 people there, the conversation will be 100% different than if it was just 1-to-1. There's nothing more intimate. There's nothing better than a 1-to-1 conversation. There just isn't. You're going to be able to tap into the relationship like never before. Right. I've been to 1-to-ones where they told me they were getting divorced, told me they were having babies, and they hadn't even told their spouse yet, either of those. Right. Like very intimate, very powerful stuff. And 1-to-one meetings are the top. Right. And that's the influential zone. So, and we have this flow in the event mastery where it's like you call to invite people, you call and text them to confirm, and you have your event, and then you follow up with 1-to-ones with, the top people from the event or the people that maybe raised their hand and said they're expressing interest in your product or solution, right? And then it's appropriate to do the 1-to-ones from them. And that's the influential zone. And as you go up the 7 levels of communication, the impact bar shows that you have the most impact at the top. And as you all know, is if you want to sell something, if you want to convince someone of something, right, then get on the phone or get in front of them. And listing presentations are not done, through text. Sales presentations are not done, through a direct mail piece. You're not going to convince anybody through a direct mail piece that they should use your services, right? It's get on the phone, it's get in front of them at an event, or it's a 1-to-1. And that's, look at sales. How many have been done 1-to-1? How many sales have been done at an event, right? And how many sales have been done over the phone, especially in financial services? So that's the 7 levels of communication. And as powerful and valid as it was 10 years ago, it's even more powerful and more valid today. It was a little bit ahead of its time even then. And that's the communication pyramid of the 7 levels of communication.
So how do we communicate better on the phone? How do we communicate better through a handwritten note? Like kind of staying at the top levels, Yeah. How do we do that better?
Well, like in 7L, where I give examples where Rick Masters screws up, right?
Mm-hmm.
He texts someone about showings and things like that, and they disappear on him because he texted instead of picking up the phone and building a relationship. And then there was the one where he emailed the paperwork and they didn't sign it and they went away. Why? Because he emailed. And that's one of the things that I think is the biggest problem is, get on the phone and be willing to get on the phone and explain the paperwork. If you can't do it in person, which, you know what, I can't say that I go over every contract. I mean, we're a global company, so I'm not going over the contract with them in person. I'm going over it in Zoom and just telling, hey, paragraph 1, paragraph 2, this is what it means and this is what it says, and looking for questions. And you know what? They're testing me for sincerity and trustworthiness and everything else. And I will tell you, you instantly become more trustworthy by getting on the phone or a Zoom and going over it than sneaking it over through an email and saying, hey, please sign this without any explanation, right? So we can understand that there's a better way to get people to, and here's the other thing, like with the title companies, right? We send an email like, hey, we need it done. And there's like 75 emails go back and forth and you still don't have a time for the closing. It would have taken one phone call to get to the proper person who are the person that scheduled the closings and get that closing scheduled at exactly the time the client and yourself can do it, right? So it's one of those where knowing the 7 levels of communication, what I hope is it maybe explains for a lot of people why people ghosted them or just left or didn't sign or became difficult. And what I hope is that it inspires people to get on the phone and do events and follow up those events with one-to-ones, or make sure that you do one-to-ones with influential and appropriate people through the year. So the mode of communication matters. That's also what I love about events. And I keep going back to events. We have Event Mastery coming up in the Referral Mastery Academy. Go check it out at eventmastery.com. We're going to help over 300 people do Pi Days this year. Any October or November event you want to do, we will help you do it. I know, we're going to have a cutoff ad in here about Event Mastery, and you're going to hear a lot about it in the Gen group, because I've never been more passionate or convinced that events are the answer ever in my entire life. People have gone from being caged and enraged in their house, locked down, can't go out, get on social media, be divisive, be argumentative. You've got an opinion, and you're not reading posts to learn. You're reading posts to find something you can argue about. And I know that's not everybody, but there are people like that. And it's one of those where we're as a nation, especially the United States, we are going from like caged and enraged to now we're uncaged. We're looking to get out and engage. So we're uncaged and looking to engage. And guess what? One of the greatest ways to rally people around engagement, or the best way to engage your database, is through an event where they show up. They come and get together. They drink beer. They drink wine. They break bread. They bowl. They go to a game. They pick up a pie. They, whatever it may be.
Mm-hmm.
And the beautiful thing.
Those events just allow an opportunity for a conversation to happen, because there's probably more people than you realize that that are in the real estate side, thinking about buying or selling, but the media is so in their heads that they're like, oh, well, I can't sell right now. And oh, the interest rates are too high, so I can't buy right now. But you know what? For some people, they need to sell. Like they are literally getting a job transfer, or there are people that, they just found out they're having twins, right? Like they need to buy a house, and the media is telling them they can't, but really, in the local market that they're in, it's an option. Like these events provide the platform for someone who is, doesn't want to waste your time, or doesn't want to ask too many questions, or doesn't want to bother you. It gives them an opportunity to pick up a pie at Thanksgiving and say, yeah, here's the thing. We kind of are thinking about it, but could you at least talk us through like the pros and cons in our market right now? And so in my perspective, the event just provides a platform, a place for that to happen. And face-to-face is where things get done.
100%. And you hit it on the head, right? What is the secret to success in business and sales? It's conversations. Mm-hmm. You and your business need to have more conversations with potential customers and consumers. And that's what the events do. And here's the other thing is, how can we communicate better? Well, for ages, sales communication was about scripts and dialogues where you tried to convince somebody to buy your product cold. Like you would call them cold, or you would do whatever it took to get in front of someone and you'd pitch them, right? And I'm telling you, the age of the pitch is over. The age of the scripts and dialogues are over. Like the sales techniques are over. That can do more harm than good in today's world. You pitch the wrong person, or you cold call the wrong person, they could turn you in to the do not call list. And, look at all the real estate companies and the financial planning companies who have been fined millions upon millions because they called the wrong people, mm-hmm. And they got turned into the do not call list. And I encourage people to turn people into the do not call list because you know what? They shouldn't be calling. You should be calling the people that you know. And here's the thing, right? Is the beauty of this is I discovered that if I have a conversation, it's likely to go to real estate anyway, because they know I'm in real estate. So they already know their script in this. And that's to ask me, how's business? How's the market? How's real estate? How's your world doing? Whatever it is, they're going to ask that. And my job is not to bring up real estate, right? It's more powerful if they bring up real estate. That means I'm branded in their brain for real estate, right? So the conversation is just an excuse to have a conversation, right? And what is the best excuse? It's an invitation to an event. That's the best reason to contact your database. So that applies to all of the modes of communication, right? The best ad would be an ad that invites them to your event. The best direct mail piece would be an invitation. What a concept, right? In fact, let's not do brochures, flyers, anything like that from now on. We're not going to do anything. It's going to be an invitation, right? And what's the call to action on an invitation? It's an RSVP. Have them RSVP for your event. So that's the direct mail piece. And just so you know, we get 3 of those. We get a save the date, we get an invitation, and we get a thank you follow-up. That could be our direct mail piece. And, right, handwritten notes. If you wrote your top 25, a handwritten note invitation to your event, 24 of them are going to attend your event. Yeah. It's a magic invitation, right? Then phone calls. We know we got to call our database. We know we should call our sphere. We know we should call the people we know, but we don't know what to say. The event solves all that problem. We're going to call and just let them know about the event. Hey, I just wanted to let you know that we're doing this pie day on November 22nd. We'd love to have you come down, get a pie. It's our treat. Would you want 1 or 2? And they're pumpkin pies. You get all the pie you want as long as you want pumpkin. So we'll get, how many do you want? 1 or 2, right? And they say 1 or 2. And you just take it from there. Anything else going on? How's the home? How's everything going? You good? Good. Yeah. And they're like, well, how's business? Oh, business is great with one exception. And it's like, well, what's the exception? Well, I've got this house on Prairie View that, it's been out there about 30 days. I think it's priced right. It's really nice. 4 bedroom, 3 bath, 3-car garage. It's in that Overland Park. Anybody that might look for something in Overland Park, right? Any ideas on maybe getting this house sold? That kind of thing, and have some fun with it. So the bottom line is, all right. So then the phone calls and they say, yes, I want one. Well, that means you need to confirm with them. So you're going to confirm from now on with phone calls and text messages, right? And the ones that you don't reach, you're going to call them back and see if they want 1 pie or 2, right? And your whole conversation, your whole communication for 2 to 3 months is about that event. And then guess what? You can talk about afterwards. You can talk about the event you just had, and you can invite everyone to your next event. I always have an event, always have an event, always have an event, always have an event that you can invite people to. And guess what? You're at Starbucks. You meet a really cool person, right? You meet a really cool person just out of chance. And you're like, you know what? You should come by and get a pie. Everybody you meet, you have an excuse to talk to them. And and I'm telling you, the answer is an invitation to an event for communication. An invitation by definition is attractive. You are saying invite him, right? Invite him. Vital signs, heart, life, in my life. Invitation means in my life. So that says, come into my life a little bit more. Come get a pie, right? So always be inviting. Always be inviting. And that leads to always be appreciating, always, everything else. So, I know we harp on events a lot, but if you're not convinced to take Event Mastery and go to eventmastery.com by now, then you need to quit listening to the Referrals podcast. Because like I said, yes, self-mastery is a big part of this. And we talked about, character and relationship mastery is a huge part of this, which is that one-to-one, but one-to-ones take a lot of energy. They're very time intensive because it's one-to-one. The power of events is they're one-to-many. So that's why the perfect follow-up for a select 5 to 10 of your event is one-to-ones, right? So who are you doing one-to-ones with? The people you should do one-to-ones with are the people who are moving toward you. You have opportunity and momentum with that relationship. Well, how do you know you have momentum? They came to your event. Mm-hmm. They're coming toward you already. Most people that come to a real estate agent's event are there, A, because of whatever it is, but B, they're there because they probably have a question about real estate and Absolutely. They wanted to ask and they wanted to ask you in person.
Absolutely.
I was just talking to Toral Chauffeur White, right? She had an event, I Love You Latte. People, basically invite people to an afternoon coffee. Guy drove up, Post-it note, couldn't even stay for the coffee, didn't even get the coffee, but he knew where to find her between 4 and 6 on that day and gave the Post-it and said, this is my sister. She needs to buy a home. Give her a call. And then he drove off. Right. And it's like, she thinks that she wouldn't have got that referral if she didn't do that event because it happened to be convenient to him. It happened to be right down the street from him. And you know what? He drove up, made it easy, got a referral from it. And just so you know, that paid for about 500 I Love You Latte events, that one referral. So, I'm a believer and we have problems with communication is what do I say, right? It's always, what do I say? That's the power of the event is you always have something to say. And that is inviting them to an event or talking about the event you just had and inviting them to the next event. So, or asking for their advice about the event, right? Say, hey, we just had this event, I want to make it a little bit better next time. What are some things I could do? You always, and that's and so many people, you don't know what you don't know. With my sphere and my community, it's an open line of communication. There's no awkwardness in our community because we're in constant communication. Well, when there's this constant flow of communication, you get more referrals just because there's this open line of communication. Toral, Scott Edwards, they have an open line of communication. There's always something brewing. They don't feel like they're poking this database that is stale. It's alive. It's thriving. It's growing. It's got a pulse. It's not a data bank, right? This hard building. It's not somewhere to go to get money, right? It's a community. It's a tribe of trust that is beautiful and vibrant. And, a tribe that is alive is worth the drive, right? So it's one of those where people will literally come for the energy of your events. And that's the truth, right? So, I wrote 7L to conquer the biggest challenge in sales of communication. And if you have questions about communication or communicating with strangers or your database, put it in the Join GenGen group. It's not just me. We have thousands upon thousands of people who can help you with your challenge around an event or a client, or that's what I love about it. And you're not going to get the turds and the trolls who like make fun of you or say, oh, ask your broker, right? Or, that kind of thing. You're going to get really nice people, good people, helpful people who are there to help you get through it. And I just want you to know this happens every day in the group. And I love where Gen has evolved to. It's just, we don't let people in unless they're trusting. And guess what? We're trustworthy. And when they come in and they realize that everybody's trustworthy, they become more trustworthy and they're trusting, and it's a tribe of trust. And guess what? It's a beautiful thing. I hope everyone can realize that in their life and in their business. And I encourage them to check us out. So
I think that fully covers all 3 C's of referability.
And there's a lot of C's that weren't included here, like a community, right? I mean, we said care last time is one C, and it's like community, right? Michael, you're all about community and building a community and building an army of ambassadors and a tribe of trust and all this, like where's community fit in? It fits under communication. If you communicate, right? There's a you and I in the middle of communication, right? COMMUNICATION, right? And it's like you and I, and it's like you and I, and you belong. And guess what? We're going to form this community. So, community, communication, right? They're pretty dang similar words, but it starts with communication. You need to communicate in a way that builds your community. So I love the word community. But here's the thing. Do you have to have a community to get referrals? The answer is no. You don't have to build a community. And there's a lot of agents around the country who don't have Facebook groups, who don't have, events or community, but they still get referrals. Why? Because they're really good communicators. Those are the 3 C's of referability.
Thank you for sharing all of that. Thanks for going over the communication pyramid too.
Yeah, my pleasure. And I think I honestly came kicking and screaming into this because these are more content driven podcasts. I love the interview driven. I'm super curious. There's another C word for you. But I'm super curious. So I like those interview styles. And it's like when I'm going to talk a lot, sometimes it makes me a little bit uncomfortable on these, but I'm really glad that we went over the 3 C's of referability because it really is the baseline of how to get referrals. And people are going to identify in each of those, where do I need to work on it? And you know what? There are brand new agents who have no competence who get referrals. You know why? Because the people trust them. They trust that me, like early in my career, right? They would give me referrals. I got 11 referrals at my very first housewarming party. Right. And my competence was not very high. I had never written an offer or a contract, and I got 11 referrals. You're like, well, you had to have a contract. Yeah, it was a build job. So the seller's agent wrote the contract, and then I read it, and then we signed it, and I studied that contract. I knew that builder's contract left and right. And then I discovered that we use a completely different contract for every other consumer. And it was the KCRER contract. So I had to go, and it's like, all right, I go find that one. And then I read it, studied it, and then I took a class on it, and I became really familiar with the KCRER contract. So, the bottom line is, here's the other thing is, there's people who are borderline on character, but they still get referrals because they're really, really, really good at what they do. Right. And that does happen. Right. But it's one of those where you want to hit a sweet spot of mixing all 3 of those things, right? And why does that competent person get the referral? It's because their communication skills are probably really good. There you go. So those are the 3 C's of referability. And I appreciate you tuning in once again to Referrals Podcast. A little shorter podcast here today, but hopefully you've gotten a lot out of it. I implore you, I almost beg you at this point, go check out eventmastery.com, make it happen, right? And the best way to get eventmastery.com is to sign up for Referral Mastery Academy. You're going to find out that you get 3 event mastery classes, a value of $3,000. For just $100 a month. in RMA. So just so many great things that are going on. Check out referralmasteryacademy.com. I truly believe that it is the best value in the sales world, and we continue to add to that value. So, check it out. Let us know what you think, and just know how much we appreciate you. And wow, what a terrific episode. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and you are enjoying this 7-part series on Rise and Thrive in 25. I absolutely love the content and concepts that we are going through to help you have a base of knowledge to build your referral-based business off of. Hey, listen, can you imagine a business based on love, generosity, and appreciation? Can you imagine your life built on a base of love, generosity, and appreciation? And shouldn't your business and your life be aligned? Why would you want to go to work and act like a completely different person? Right? You don't. You want to be in alignment. You want to be in congruence. And guess what? This is what we're teaching. This is what you're learning. If you enjoyed today's episode, first of all, do yourself a favor. If you're on the podcast, then make sure you subscribe to the podcast so that you get continuing episodes of Referrals Podcast. If you're on YouTube, make sure you subscribe there, hit the bell, let us know what you think, and also make sure you're subscribed so that you get indications and notifications when the next ones come up. Also, while you're here, if you enjoyed what you heard, you want to get more information, I've got a couple of great resources for you. Join gengen.com. Join the generosity generation. We are in the midst of the generosity generation. We have all graduated from the ego era to a more powerful nation called the generosity generation. And if you enjoyed what you're hearing today, you're going to be a great member, and we want to refer you, and we want your referrals. Join gengen.com, joingen.com. And then also, listen, get some help. As you hear the concepts, wouldn't it be great to talk to someone who can listen to you, understand where you're going, hear you, truly hear you, and then help you make it to the next level, help you put in a plan for the next level? Do yourself a favor and go to callwithcoach.com. Callwithcoach.com. Get signed up with one of our strategic coaches. This is 100% a call about you. No sales, no pitch, no obligation, no cost. Crazy, cool, make it happen. So join gengen.com, callwithcoach.com, make it happen. And also, I'll see you on the next episode of Referrals Podcast.